Can we go for a walk? The sky was darkening. The weight of the day hung over me, but spending time with Ivy always lightened it. I found her by the shore, eyes drifting over the waves. Are you okay? I asked. She stayed silent for a moment, gently burying her feet in the sand as she gazed at the sea. Then, with a slight shrug, she said, "We broke up?" For a second, I didn't know what to say. Her voice was calm, but there was a small crack beneath it. "I'm sorry," I replied, though what I saw in her eyes wasn't deep sadness. It was more like relief. "I need to clear my head," she smiled. "Let's go out tonight. A rock bar?" I nodded. "And maybe we each grab a drink and meet someone new," I added, jokingly. Ivy laughed. "Exactly what I had in mind," she said with a playful wink. Later that night, as the dark sky stretched over Istanbul, we stepped into a smoky, crowded rock bar. Inside, it was dimly lit, old posters hanging on the walls, and a band was slowly starting to play on stage. We sat in a corner with drinks in front of us, nudging each other playfully. "So," I asked, "anyone caught your eye yet?" Ivy smiled, but her gaze wasn't wandering around the room. It was fixed on me. "I just want to stay here for now," she said softly. As the hours passed, our conversation deepened. One topic led to another, and we sang along to the music. Ivy's eyes grew larger in the golden stage light, glowing beneath her long lashes. Every time she laughed, something inside me stirred. At one point, Ivy was telling a story with excitement, but I was only watching her face. Her smile was warm, just like the first day we met. I barely registered what she was saying. Suddenly, Ivy paused and looked away. She pulled out her phone and started typing. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. "I want to tell you something, but I can't say it out loud." I raised an eyebrow and glanced at her. Just then, another message arrived. "I want to kiss you." In that moment, my heart missed a beat. A wave of joy, hidden somewhere deep inside, surged up. Ivy lowered her head, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass. I leaned in closer, a smile tugging at my lips, a feeling I hadn't been able to name rising in my chest. When our eyes met, we both got lost in the moment. Maybe some things weren't meant to be said out loud. Sometimes a single glance said everything. The moment I read Ivy's message, I felt time stop. My heart pounded with a joy too big to fit into that small screen. The music in the bar, the voices of people, the faint clinking of ice in glasses, all faded into whispers. When I looked up, Ivy's eyes met mine, shy, yet unwavering. There was a faint smile on her lips, as if she stood at the edge of a cliff she was about to leap from. I leaned in slowly. The space between us narrowed with each breath, and I watched her with a volcano of emotions rising inside me. Our hands brushed against each other on the table, and when her fingers gently touched mine, a current of electricity spread through my body. She leaned closer. Our lips were almost touching, and the air between us trembled. In that moment, her lips softly met mine. Our kiss felt like a secret lost in the crowd. Time slowed for us. The world grew smaller. Maybe, in that instant, we were the only two people in the universe. When we stepped out of the bar, we walked hand in hand. The wind lightly tossed my hair, and Ivy's warm hand disappeared into my palm. The night felt like a quiet poem drifting through the streets of Istanbul. "Shall we go to Galata?" Ivy asked, her eyes shining. When we reached the Galata Tower, it stood tall in the darkness of the night. The cobblestones beneath our feet were cold, but the fire inside me left no room for the chill. We stood by the iron railings together. Below us, the dim glow of streetlights flickered, and the city stretched out beneath our feet. Ivy stepped forward and looked into my eyes. The stars above us gently danced across the sky. "This city feels different at night," she whispered. "It's like the stars are shining just for us," I added. Ivy laughed softly. That laugh made flowers bloom in my heart. She stepped closer once again, placing her hands on my face, her thumb slowly brushing against my cheek. This time, without hesitation, I kissed her. Beneath the shadow of the Galata Tower, our lips met once more. The only witnesses were the stars, and that night, it felt like all the streets of Istanbul belonged to us. Leaning lightly against the tower's stone, I breathed in the scent of Ivy's hair. Her lips still lingered warm on mine. When our eyes opened, we both knew the same thing. This wasn't just a kiss. This was a story our hearts whispered to each other in the dark of night. As the days in Istanbul grew longer, we found our rhythm. Walking down Istiklal Street became a ritual. We'd stop by street musicians, listening closely and singing along. Even in the crowd, Ivy's voice was always the one I heard closest to me. Some evenings, we'd escape the bustle and have wine nights at home. An old record player spun slowly in the middle of the room, and the music seeped gently into the corners. Ivy would tuck her legs under herself, sipping her wine as she read a book or watched an old film with me. But more than anything, I found myself enchanted by her laughter. No warmth from any glass of wine could match the way her laugh touched something deep inside me. Time passed, and the days flowed into one another. But every time I stepped onto the stones of Galata, I remembered that night. Ivy's fingers would search for mine, and her eyes, without a word, would quietly say, "I'm here." Perhaps everything began with a simple pillow and blanket. Now, as we shared that blanket, we kept walking under the stars. Do you think relationships always start with a grand gesture, or can even the smallest moment change everything?